The pounding on the door grew louder, then crack! The lock snapped, and the door burst open. 2 men in fake HOA uniforms stormed in, guns barely concealed. "You had your chance," one growled. "Now we do this the hard way." But what they didn't know, this time they weren't in control, and what happened next would be their downfall. But let's start from the beginning. The first time I saw the fake HOA officers, I thought it was some kind of mistake. 2 men stood on my doorstep, their navy blue uniforms resembling something official, but something felt off. The letters HOA were printed in bold white across their chests, as if that alone made them legitimate. The bigger one, mid-40s, graying hair, the kind of guy who smiled like he enjoyed other people's misery, stepped forward. The other one was thinner, sharp-featured, gripping a clipboard like it held the keys to my fate. "Mr. Carter, you have 24 hours to vacate the premises," the burly one announced, voice flat, rehearsed. I stared at them. "What? I own this house. There's no HOA here." The wiry one smirked, flipping a page. "Well, now there is. New HOA regulations. You're in violation of several clauses, including failure to comply with property aesthetics." He let that sink in, then shrugged. "That means you gotta go." My fists clenched. These men weren't just trying to enforce fake rules, they were conning people out of their homes. You can't just make up rules and kick people out of their own houses. The burly man took a step closer, the smell of cheap aftershave and cigarettes clinging to him. His eyes, cold and amused, locked onto mine. "If you don't leave willingly, we'll have to escalate things. And trust me, you don't want that." Something about the way he said it sent a chill through my spine. That's when I noticed it. Beneath his jacket, just above his belt, the outline of a gun. My stomach turned to stone. This wasn't just an HOA scam. These guys weren't just bullies. They were dangerous men, and they had just marked me as their next victim. They left, but their threats weren't empty. The next morning I woke up to find my water shut off. No warning, no explanation. Just a dry tap and an unsettling realization that this wasn't over. I stepped outside and immediately spotted the bright orange tow notice slapped on my car, claiming it was illegally parked in my own driveway. My mailbox was stuffed with HOA violation notices, each more ridiculous than the last. Unapproved exterior color. Failure to maintain landscaping. Unauthorized structure on property. All fake. All designed to break me down. Then came the intimidation. At first, it was subtle. Loud knocks at night, disappearing by the time I reached the door. Trash cans knocked over, as if by the wind, except the wind doesn't drag them into the street. Then the real fear set in. Checking my security camera, I caught one of them pacing outside my house. The wiry one. Hands in his pockets, head swiveling as he scanned my property. Watching, waiting. I took everything, the footage, the fake notices, even a record of my shut-off utilities, to the police. I laid it all out, expecting some kind of response. "It's a civil matter," the officer said, barely glancing at my evidence. "File a complaint with your local housing board." Civil matter? These men were running a scam, extorting homeowners with fake authority, and the police wouldn't lift a finger? I tried reaching out to my neighbors, but the damage had already been done. Fear had spread like a disease. Some had been threatened, just like me. Fake violations, late-night visits, but others had already given up. Sold their homes at rock-bottom prices to a mysterious LLC. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about me. They were clearing out the whole neighborhood. I wasn't about to be next. If the police wouldn't help, I'd find another way. Because this was war. I started digging. Real HOAs don't just appear overnight. They need legal documentation, board members, proper filings with the county. Every real HOA has public records, and these guys, they had nothing. No incorporation documents, no registered board, no legal standing whatsoever. That's when I turned my attention to the mysterious LLC that had been buying up homes. Property records led straight back to the same two men. They weren't just harassing homeowners. They were systematically forcing people out, driving down property values and flipping houses for profit. A manufactured housing crisis. But I still needed solid proof. Then I caught my break. Mrs. Perkins, an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. The fake HOA had targeted her first, bombarding her with phony violation notices, threatening legal action. Terrified, she had signed one of their fake HOA contracts just to make it stop. When I showed her the truth, that none of it was real, her hands shook. She had nearly sold her home to them. And she wasn't the only one. With her testimony and the pile of forged documents I had gathered, I took it public. I reached out to a local investigative journalist. Within days, the story exploded. Fake cops running illegal HOA scam. News outlets picked it up. Social media went wild. People who had lost their homes started coming forward, sharing their own horror stories. But I knew exposure wasn't enough. These men had gotten too deep, and too comfortable. A few headlines wouldn't scare them off. If I wanted to end this, I had to set a trap. That night they came back, angrier, bolder. The pounding on my door was deafening this time, shaking the frame. Their voices, dripping with rage, ripped through the silence of the night. "Open the damn door, Carter!" Bang, bang, bang. Fists hammered against the wood, each hit laced with frustration. These men weren't here to intimidate anymore. They were here to end this. But this time, I was ready. I stood behind the door, my pulse steady. The house was dark, but I could see their shadows shifting under the porch light. They thought I was alone. They thought they could walk in, rough me up, and scare me into silence. They had no idea what was coming. The moment the burly one took a step toward my property, red and blue lights flooded the street, screeching tires, doors slamming, loud commands. The fake cops froze. For the first time, I saw it. Their confidence crack. The wiry one took a half step back. The burly one clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. The real police swarmed in. "Hands in the air, now!" The burly man didn't listen. He reached for his waistband. Bad move. A blur of movement. Officers tackled him to the ground before he could even clear his holster. His face smashed against the pavement, handcuffs clicking into place. The wiry one hesitated, his eyes darting between me, the cops, and the street beyond. Then, he ran. Big mistake. He made it 5 steps before an officer took him down, slamming him onto the hood of a squad car. Game over. They weren't just running an HOA scam. When the police searched their vehicle, they found everything. Forged documents, eviction notices, fake legal filings. Enough evidence to bury them. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. Both men had long criminal histories, fraud, extortion, even outstanding warrants from previous scams in other states. They had been pulling this con for years, moving from neighborhood to neighborhood, preying on homeowners with no one to turn to. Not this time. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Fake cops exposed in shocking HOA scam. Illegal evictions, fraud. Suspects face multiple charges. Hero homeowner takes down con artists in sting operation. My house wasn't just saved. It became the place where their entire empire crumbled. And my neighborhood? We weren't just victims anymore. We were survivors, and no fake cop would ever set foot on our land again.